Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. I am your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very, very accomplished professional turned entrepreneur, Mr. Pramod Rao. Pramod, welcome to the show.
Thanks a lot, Ashutosh, for the opportunity, and great to be on The Brand Called You.
Thank you.
I've been following you, and great to see where you've got to The Brand Called You today, right? And yeah, looking forward to the next.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Pramod is the co-founder and CEO of Threado, and we'll talk about that. He's also the ex-vice president marketing of Zomato. Pramod enjoys road trips and being a pet parent. So Pramod, today let's start with talking of Threado. Tell me about this venture.
Sure. So Threado essentially is a marketing platform focused on helping businesses that have a community focus, right? What we started about a year back, and once the pandemic hit, and the reason why I started Threado, right, was essentially looking at what's happening around us given the pandemic took place. And one of the key things that I observed was everything moved online, and multiple platforms today are enabling people to come together in groups, right? So which we call as communities today. So that accelerated by several years. And today we see that being the common way for people to connect with each other online. In fact, Web 3.0 that a lot of people are talking about these days is completely built on top of communities, and that forms the infrastructure layer for Web 3.0, right? So broadly, started seeing this trend happening where communities become, I think, will become mainstay or almost the common way for businesses to exist or interact with their customers. My own experience with Zomato largely involved building a strong content and community playbook, which forms the foundation of Zomato today. So I've seen the first-hand benefits of a community-first approach to businesses, right? The network effects are really, long term, the benefits of community are difficult to knock off. Which is why we started Threado with a mission to help more and more organizations take a community approach. And we basically help them manage their online community wherever it exists, right? And make it super easy for them to get the best out of the community and provide a great experience to their members. So that's what Threado is about. We are an early stage startup, a small team of about 9 members right now. And in the very early days of 0 to 1 journey.
Fascinating. So, you say that you are building communities. Can you give me an example of some of the communities you've been creating?
Yeah, sure. So we aren't exactly building communities ourselves, right? We are helping out existing communities, right? Manage their communities better, right? So taking an example, today there are these cohort-based courses like On Deck, right, or closer to home. There's like Stoa School and few other platforms that have come up. So most of these have their communities on a Discord or Slack, right, or even take SaaS companies today, who are for individuals, creators, or developers. So it could be like Figma, which is for designers, or it could be like Descript, which is for podcasters. They have a very community-first approach to growth, right? So we are essentially targeting these businesses, right, who grow through communities. Their main focus is to build a community, get the customers to interact with each other, add value to each other, and then solve their problems through their product, right? So, and we sort of help them in the sense that, you can come onto Threado, connect your Discord or Slack or Twitter, and we sort of become the single source of truth of what's happening in the community, and also help you get insights on, who are the active members, who's at risk, and bring in some automation in the workflows, right? So the marketing teams of these organizations like Figma, Descript, they can use Threado to manage their communities online, right? So that's our end goal. So we're working with very early, customers right now, a handful of them. The idea is to sort of build the product right now and onboard more customers along the way. Yeah.
Okay. So again, for a better understanding for myself,
sure. Yeah.
The Brand Called You has, say, communities on multiple social media platforms. So we could come to you and say, help us and understand how our community on each platform is performing for us. Is that what?
Exactly. Yeah. On each platform, and also collectively, like what does it mean, right? Like, how's the engagement levels? What insights can you get on the engagement? Like, what are the things being discussed? Who's very active? Who's at the risk of losing or churning out? And what actions should you take to drive more engagement, right? So we you can say that, Threado is a companion to community builders to help them provide a great experience to the members.
Very interesting. And a question, I think you partly answered it, but when I was reading about you, you do mention that we are helping shape a future where businesses grow sustainably by taking a community-led approach to growth.
Yeah.
For my viewers and listeners, just help me understand this with an example.
Yeah, sure. So the way I think about this is traditionally the business approach has been flipped in the sense that we have a product and then let's go and advertise and get customers to use our product, right? So which even till recent times has been like, okay, we've got a product, let's go on Facebook, do ads, or go on Google, invest in the Google AdWords, or create our Instagram account and then sort of broadcast messages. So it's a very one-to-many approach, and a lot of paid advertising to get the customers going, right? Now, and that's great. I'm not saying that's I'm sure every company should have this as one of the channels to acquire customers, right? But what happens is, what's happening is over the years, these traditional channels, let's say the Facebook, YouTube, Instagram of the world, content has become infinite there, right? So on one hand, the real estate that you need to advertise on, that's become really competitive. So over time, it's getting more expensive, right? And more inefficient because multiple people are competing for the same space. And you're trying to, let's say, even if you have 100,000 followers on any platform, not everything that you post reaches everyone. So the algos are designed in a way where you literally have to pay to be on top of the news feed, right? Second, I think the users have also, there's a fatigue in terms of, should I click this ad? Is this even relevant to me? And so on, and data privacy sort of being a concern. I think on both the user side and the brand side, there is a need for, or a movement we are seeing towards better ways to add value to each other, right? Which is where the community approach comes in, right? I think from traditional forms of marketing, we are seeing more brands take a community approach today, which essentially identify the people who are relevant for you, get them to connect with each other, add value to each other, and you're enabling these experiences, understand the problems, and then solve it, right? And if you do that really well, it becomes a flywheel over time. So more people come into the community because this community adds value and helps solve their problems, which gets more people to come there, right? So, and that's how we had the flywheel at Zomato, right? Our value prop for users was we help you discover great places to eat. And, that's the foundation of Zomato when we started out. So we brought in great content, right? So more users came on our platform because they got to discover great places to eat. They shared their experiences and in the form of reviews or ratings. That enriched the content even more, right? Which got more people again on the platform, right? Which got more content, that got us more content as well. So it was a content and community flywheel that took off. And the benefits of this is we're not spending any money to build this, right? It takes a lot of effort to identify the right set of people, get them on board, get them engaged on the community. But over time, it's an organic flywheel, right? And that network effect is very difficult to replicate, right? So you can copy products, but it's very difficult to copy this community network effect, right? And that's what I mentioned, sustainable growth. That's what it looks like, right? It takes a lot of effort and time, but in the long run, the benefits are organic growth flywheel, lower CAC, more stickiness, higher LTV of customers, right? And that's a future I'd love to help create, right? If businesses can. Because the easy answer is, raise money and throw it on Facebook or Google.
Correct.
But I think both the brands and the users will appreciate a more closer relationship with each other. So that's what we're trying to help.
Fabulous. And one more question relating to Threado before I move to some questions for you on startups.
Sure.
What have been some of your challenges? I know you said that you're only a 1-year-old startup, but what have been some of your challenges as you've built Threado?
Yeah, I think 3 key challenges. One is landing on what exactly are we building, right? Like what do people want is a journey in itself. So I think that's been a discovery journey for us. We've changed our product over the last 1 year. Maybe we could have done it earlier. I don't know, but I don't think I would have changed things going back. But that is a challenge and also a journey that I'm happy we took, to discover, okay, we built something, we felt it added value, then we discovered, okay, maybe not. And then we changed direction to what we're building today. And even now we're sort of discovering, okay, out of what we're building, what's really valuable, what's higher importance and lower importance and so on. So that's very key part of a startup, to identify whatever you're building, is it adding value to the end customer. Second, I think it's at any stage is hiring. So most of my time goes into figuring out how do we build this A team, sort of the foundations of Threado, because essentially get people on board who can help shape Threado for the long run. And it's always a challenge to get the right set. It's always about getting the right person on board and spending time on that, or get someone in right away, right? So trying to balance that essentially. And third, as anything, is how do we be faster and at the same time do quality work. Because I think early on it's about how optimizing for getting a number of shots at our goal, right? So for that, we need to be fast. We need to do high quality execution. And that's always a challenging part. How do we really increase speed and efficiency to allow us multiple shots at the target, right? So these are 3 broad areas. Yeah.
Fascinating. What you're saying takes me back to my Guardian days, as well as to my brand called You days as a startup entrepreneur. But I'm now going to ask you a few questions about startups, because you've done startups. So let me first ask you a question on Zomato. You spent 8.5 years with Zomato, and you were employee number 13, which was right up in the beginning.
Yeah.
What was some of your learnings as Zomato scaled up into such a major organization?
Yeah, it's a lot to unpack there for sure, right? So to give you some context, I joined when we were foodiebay.com, right? And this was back in 2010. And we were 10 people in Delhi, and I think we had 2 in Mumbai and 1 in Bangalore, essentially at that point. And we were in 5 cities in India, right? So when I joined, I'd worked with the founders before in my previous company, so it was a leap of faith. I think one of the key learnings right at the beginning, is for anyone, and I do this even when I'm interviewing people, to help them decide should they join and how should they join a startup, right? So I think the call is basically, do you trust the founders, right? And do you trust what they're building and the broader market, right? So I think that's been one of the learnings. I took a leap of faith early on, and for me it was what's the worst outcome that will come? I learned some great things over a couple of years, and then move on to do something else if nothing works out, right? So taking a leap of faith is important, but have at least one of these things, know the founders well, or bet on the founders or the market, and then take that call, right? Second learning, I think, is there's no way to predict the future, right? So when I joined, we never knew, and I think nobody in Zomato knew that we'll be what we are today. But always believe that you can shape the future, right? So and you can shape the future by engineering serendipity, right? What I talked about, allowing yourself to have multiple shots at the target, right? And the more you do it, you're basically shaping the future, right? And for us at Zomato, right from the get-go, I was always amazed at the ambition that we had, right, at every point in time. So we were in 5 cities when I joined. The aim was to become the #1 food and restaurant guide in India, right? So that was the first step. And then when we reached there, the next thing was, okay, let's go and, we had this crazy ambition of like, let's go and like, crack London, right? And this was in November, I think, and November 2011. We were like, why don't we launch London by December 25th? And then we were like, okay, let's do it, right? So I think for me that like was the energy at Zomato. It's like, think of a crazy like goalpost and then curling attitude after that, right? Let's do and see what happens.
Wonderful.
So that built the culture, I think, at Zomato. So having great people to work at, like, and I think a combination of ambition, the do it attitude, builds great culture. At least for me, that's what worked. And yeah, lastly, I guess learning was there'll always be ups and downs, right? I think I've learned a lot to zoom out over the years, versus being overly within the box or worrying about what is happening in the moment. Because in the end, the broader, as long as you have a view of how it is shaping up overall, and you're certain, okay, how this might lead to the next 6 months, it pans out, you have a way to come out of it, right? So those would be some of the
fascinating. And you have been a startup entrepreneur. I'm sure you have invested in startups as well. My next question to you is that what are some of the basic mistakes a lot of startup entrepreneurs make?
Yeah, so I think one of the mistakes is, and maybe we've also gone through that, is first is writing lines of code before first, versus like having clarity on what you really want to do, right, or build. So a lot of us probably get in too early to the build phase, which is not a great approach. I think like there's a lot more. Build is probably the last 10%, like 90% of like the work is like figuring out where the market is, what's your wedge into it, and sort of then like writing lines of code after validating a few things, right?
Right.
That's one of the biggest, because you spend, once you start building, you just spend too much time on that box, right? So that's one of the biggest mistakes that people do, and we also did that with our first product that we had. And versus the second product, we took a different approach. We sort of got feedback first and then started coding it. Okay. The second is, I think, on hiring, right? So there are two schools of thought. One is like you hire a team to execute and get started, right? Which is good, but I think like and we've gone through the phase also, like right now. So the second is on the team, right? So I think my thoughts have changed over time. Like maybe 10 years back, the idea would be get like a good execution team and get started. I think now we want people with experience to form. At least that's a focus. Get a founding team with experience on board, like at least 4 to 6 years of experience, who can build their teams out in the future, right? So today, what they're doing is probably individual contributor role, or like getting a sense of the product, but that very soon, like they'll be in a position when we want to scale to build their teams out. So essentially, you're getting mini entrepreneurs, right, to sort of take the mantle and shape Threado, right? Versus maybe 10 years back, I'd be like, let's hire freshers and get started. But what happens there is a lot of the decision making the entrepreneur becomes a bottleneck, right? And right now, I think the way to think about it is, how do you debottleneck yourself? Like how do you sort of get people and remove yourself from being a bottleneck? Right?
Correct. Well said. So my next question to you, Pramod, is this $1 million question of scaling up. Everyone wants to be pan-India. Everyone wants to be global. Yeah. But my question to you is, at what stage should a startup start to scale up?
Yeah. Very good question. I think so. I can only talk about how we thought about this at Zomato, right? and very early days, for example, like I said, when I joined, we were in 5 cities. And the idea was, and even from the 5 cities, we were doing really well in Delhi, and maybe the other cities were still like nascent, right? But only once, let's say 2 or 3 cities started performing some, like, have like a North Star metric in mind, and then we started seeing the same performance in other cities. When we felt, okay, we can replicate this in more markets, right? So we spent a good year after I joined, to just like move from, let's say, 5 to 10 cities and get like and I think back then we had another competitor. So I think we got the confidence once we overtook them in traffic, and then people loved us more, and we started seeing, you could say, product market fit in India. And only then did we think of, okay, like maybe we have found a replicable model. So now we can take it to other markets, right? And expand there. We also had 2 or 3 ways of scaling, right? One is geographically, one is adjacent. So we launched Zomato events back then, and then we shut it down after a year, right? So I think thinking about adjacencies and also geographical presence. I think at the point when you want to scale is when you've reached a place where the organic flywheel is kicking off, right? And then you can replicate, or that you have a playbook to replicate it in other markets, right? Until then, I think you still need to focus on select markets or customers and go.
Wonderful. So Pramod, I have time for 2 more questions for you.
Yeah.
My next question to you is on funding. There is often a debate: should I bootstrap my startup as long as I can, or should I grab the money whenever I get it? I'd love to get your perspective.
Yeah. So I actually think you should only raise when you need to, right? So my belief is, one is, there should be a need for a raise, like, for your business. I think each one's context is totally different,
sure.
Right? So if you can bootstrap it to a point where you know what you're building, you're sure of, because there are a lot of unknowns when you start out, right? Now, for someone, like I met a founder yesterday, and who said that, they would not exist if they're not raised right from the get-go, right? Because he didn't have financial backing, and couldn't have lasted beyond a certain time, right? So it worked for his context that he raised right from the start, and helped him build what is built today. But the context could be completely different. Like if you have the ability to bootstrap it, to figure out to the point where you're sure of, maybe not sure, but the direction, right, that you want to take. And then you need capital or don't need capital, like you can take a call at that point, right? But always like depending on at the stage you are, if you need capital, then you raise. If you don't need capital, I think you don't need to raise, right? And most often money comes to you like when you don't need it. That's
Correct.
how it is. But you take a call if it makes sense for you.
Well said. And my last question to you, and again, I've been asked this many, many times. Is it good to have a co-founder, or should you go solo? And I know that there are answers for it, but I'd love to get your perspective.
So I do have a co-founder and CTO. Whether it is necessary or not, to be honest, like before Threado, I had explored 7 other startup ideas. The reason they did not take off one of the key things was I was waiting for a technical co-founder, right? So when I started Threado, I had actually learned to code and built out the first version of it for a few months. But it reached a point where my capabilities just capped out, and I started to look out for building out the engineering team, right? So my journey has been a bit of both. Like, to start, I don't think you should wait for a technical co-founder. I think a lot of people tell you that. In fact, like a lot of the folks I met, they were saying, you don't have a co-founder, like it just complement, like, you're coming from business background and all of that. But those are myths. I think you can get started. And if you're building something that resonates with people and they want to come on board, I think having 2 people or 3 people co-founding team is always good. I have benefited a lot because Abhishek came on board as co-founder, right from thinking on the product, how we're shaping Threado. I don't think I could have done that as a solo founder. But yeah, there is no right or wrong answer. I think, like, for me, it was serendipity. I just found Abhishek, and then we sort of, were able to build Threado together over the last few months. But yeah, I don't know how the world would have been if I was a solo founder.
Wonderful. Pramod, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you for talking to me about so much about Threado and about communities and how well you are building all these. And thank you for sharing your thoughts for startups. Thank you again, and good luck.
Yeah, no, it was great chatting with you, and wishing you all the best as you get to 1,000 interviews. Right.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.